Hey guys, my name is Toby and today we're going to be talking about masking. Now, masking is one of the core fundamental Photoshop skills that I think everybody should know how to do, and I'm going to show you why that is. So without further ado, let's get started. So what we want to do is we've got this image here of a sunset and we want to add this balloon into it. So first things first, I'm just going to move this over into the other image, and I'm going to do that by taking the marquee tool, or the rectangular marquee tool, which is keyboard shortcut M, and I'm just going to select around this balloon. Then I'm going to go to the move tool, which is keyboard shortcut V, and I'm just going to click and drag this up over to the other image, drag it down and let go. And now we have a balloon. So obviously we need to get rid of the sky that's kind of come over with this balloon. And before I show you masking, I'm going to show you the wrong way of doing this and why it's the wrong way. And you know, this technique, it would work technically. There's nothing actually wrong with it. It's just it's not a very good way of working, and it's not a very lacking a better word, it's not a very sustainable way of working. So what I mean by that is, a lot of the time when you do things in Photoshop, they're things that then can't be undone very easily. Whereas if you're going to use a mask, which I will show you how to do in a moment, then you can undo it later, which is where this starts to become really powerful. So we could quite happily take our eraser tool and we'll just start, you know, deleting this. But let's say we're a bit clumsy and we accidentally delete a bit that we wanted, but we don't notice it immediately, and we kind of start, you know, continuing to kind of erase this. And then suddenly we go, oh no, we've deleted that basket. Well, the bad news is the only real way to get that back is to kind of edit undo a whole bunch of times. And you know, you could use the art history brush, but in a lot of instances that won't work if you're doing something more complicated than this. So you know, you're going to have to edit undo until you get your basket back. Now the problem is the undo queue here, or the history, isn't infinite. So you might not notice that change and keep working for half an hour and then suddenly go, oh no, I've deleted that bit. But the point at which you've got this change in the history will have been long gone. You won't ever be able to get back to that. So the only way to do it is unfortunately to delete it and start again. And no one wants to do that. No one wants to do more work than they have to do because of a little tiny mistake. But you know, that's kind of how that goes. So what is the better option? I'm just going to go back to when we drag this in here. The better option is to use a mask, which on the face of it is more or less the same technique, except that it doesn't delete the image. So the way you add a mask to something is you select whatever you want to add it to, and then you click this little rectangle with a circle in it down at the bottom here. And that is going to add your layer mask. And this is what this white box here is. Now, one thing to be aware of, you have to kind of pay attention to which one of these you have selected, because if you have the thumbnail selected, you're going to be working directly on the image. So let's say I want to paint with black with a brush, hit the B for brush. If I paint with black here, it's going to just paint black onto our image, which doesn't look very good. But if I paint with black onto the layer mask, it's going to make it transparent. And the reason for this is that if you want to think of this like another image, anything that you paint on here, by the way, you can see that little splodge there is where I've just painted. Anything that's black is transparent. Anything that's white is opaque. And just to kind of show you what I mean by that, if you want to see the mask full screen, if you hold down Alt on the keyboard or Option on the Mac, and you click, it will show you what you've just painted. So this is me painting black onto this white box. But this is having a direct impact on this layer. This layer basically tells this one which parts of it should be visible and which parts shouldn't. So you're just kind of hiding it using the mask. And this is really cool because it means that if we accidentally delete something that we didn't want to delete and we kind of continue to go around this, and I'm doing a really rough job of this, but then suddenly we go, oh yeah, we deleted that. All you've got to do is paint with white over this area. So when you're masking, I find a good technique is I kind of sit here with my finger hovering over the X key, and the reason is that at the moment we have black in the foreground and white in the background, but a lot of the time you will need to swap back and forth quite quickly. So if you hit X, it will actually just swap your foreground and background colors, so we can kind of quite happily just tap X and, you know, add and remove stuff very quickly, which is a really good way of working. By the way, if you ever need to, let's say we've got, I don't know, different colors selected. If you ever need to get back to pure black and pure white very quickly, you can either click this little symbol here, or if you hit D on the keyboard, it goes back to your default colors, which are black and white. And now we can kind of come in here and we can, go around this balloon, but it doesn't rely on the undo queue, is kind of the point I'm trying to make. You don't have to try or hope that the changes you made are still in the history queue, because at any point you can just come back and change something. We could, delete the middle of this, kind of finish going around the outside of this, and then go, oh yeah, I actually want to put the middle back in. Ta-da! Simple as that. And it's brilliant. And the reason it's brilliant as well is that this will survive the process of being saved and closed. You could, mask something, save it, shut your computer down, go on holiday for 2 weeks, come back, and you'd still have all of this editability. And the reason is that nothing is being deleted. So if you want to disable a mask, you can either go right-click, disable layer mask, or if you hold Shift and click, it will put a big red cross over it. And you can see that that's actually what's on this layer, but we're just hiding a lot of it. So nothing has been deleted. That's important. But there are better ways of doing this than just doing it by hand, and a lot of the time you will have to mask things by hand. It's just kind of how it goes. So actually, let's go ahead and delete this layer mask, because we can do this a little bit quicker. In fact, we can do it a lot quicker. If we take the Quick Select tool, which is keyboard shortcut W, I'm just going to kind of trace around the outside of this balloon very quickly, and it's going to give me a selection. And the thing with masks and selections is that they're more or less interchangeable. You can use a selection to create a mask, and equally you can use a mask to get a selection. So they're quite cool in that respect. So what we can do, now that we've got this kind of rough selection, again, you could spend some time kind of getting this right if you wanted to, but I'm just going to do a really quick one here. We could take, with our layer selected, if we now hit the mask button, it's going to add a layer mask using that selection to our image. Now, obviously, the problem with this is it's kind of done it backwards to how we wanted it to. The white bit's the black and the black bits are white, so it's kind of gotten that wrong. But that's very easy to fix. So you need to think of this like another image. In other words, this is just an image made entirely of black and white pixels, or grey pixels, because you can have semi-transparency in this if you paint with grey. Whoops, didn't mean to press that. But because it's another image, we can do anything to this that we can to a normal image. So we can blur it, sharpen it, apply levels adjustments to it. You can do whatever you want to this, more or less. But it does mean that we can also invert it, just like we could any other image. So I'm just going to hold Alt to come out of this, because we don't need to be in that view to do this. With the layer mask selected, I'm going to press Command or Control if you're on the PC, and the letter I, and it's going to invert our mask. And simple as that. Now, one thing this has done, it's not quite gotten the edges of this correctly. So what I am going to do, I'm going to go hold Alt, and I'm going to go back into this view here. I'm going to take the brush tool, and I'm just going to, with black, I'm just going to paint over this crisp edge, just to make sure that it's has gotten all of that, and it's not going to show up any crisp, random, single lines of pixels anywhere. So there we go. And again, this is quite rough. We could come in here and just tidy this up by hand, because once it's kind of done, it's not still depending on that selection. We can still come in here and, tidy it up by hand if we want to. It's a useful thing to be able to do. So there we go. We could go around this. And just for those of you curious, I did mention you can get a selection off of a mask as well. If you hold down Command or Control and you click the mask, it's going to give you a selection based on that mask. So we're not actually going to do anything with that now, but I just thought it's quite a neat thing to know that you can do. So, as a little bonus fact, I kind of want to finish this composite off, because that doesn't really look like it fits very well. And I want to do that with a levels adjustment, but sticking with this whole theme of not using the undo queue. It's like we want to, any change you make in Photoshop, there is nearly always a way of doing it so that it's non-destructive. So the old school way of doing this, if you like, is if you have this layer selected, not the layer mask. If you select the layer, you can go up to Image, Adjustments, Levels. and then we can muck about with this and do something with it. But the problem is that as soon as you hit OK, that's baked in. You can't then come back to that later and change it, because that is now affecting that layer permanently, unless you edit undo, which is what I'm going to do now because I don't want to do that. So what's the better way of doing it? Well, the better way of doing it is working with adjustment layers. And there's a couple of ways of getting to those. I have this tab here called Adjustments, which if you don't have, you can get by going to Window, Adjustments. But you can also go Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and then add them from here as well. So I'm going to add a new Levels Adjustment Layer. And we'll just hit OK. And first thing you should notice, by the way, is that adjustment layers, when you use them, they come with a mask. So you can actually use a mask to dictate where certain levels or where your adjustments actually take place, which is kind of neat. But in this case, we don't really want to have to, mask around this again so it just affects the balloon. Because at the moment, and this is kind of one of the things to get your head around with adjustment layers if you've not used them before, an adjustment layer will affect everything underneath it in the layers stack. So in this case, this will also affect our background layer. So if I start changing things, it's going to affect everything, which is, not what we want. I'm going to reset that back to 1. Now the way around this is you have to use something called a clipping mask. And I know that has the word mask in it, but it's not quite the same thing. What that basically means is that if you clip something to another layer, it will only affect what's in the layer below it. So if I hit the keyboard shortcut, which is Command Alt and G, this levels adjustment layer now has a little arrow next to it saying it's only going to affect this layer, which is exactly what it does. So we can just kind of darken this right the way down, something like that, I think, and voila. And again, like I said, you could come in here and you could, repaint this in and copy this mask into this one and do all sorts of things. But when you clip it, it means that I can still come in here with my move tool and move this around. And if this was masked very specifically to where this layer was, then that would not work. And clipping it is definitely the way to go. And you can clip, multiple adjustment layers to each other as well. So that's just a useful thing to know that you're able to do. But I think that's looking pretty good now. So thank you very much for watching. My name is Toby, and we'll see you soon. Hey guys, did you know that right now we're giving away over 2 hours of professional compositing training for free? All you have to do is sign up for our newsletter and we'll send you a free detailed tutorial on how to make this image from start to finish. Also, you'll never miss another video as we'll send you regular updates whenever we bring out new content. So please go and check it out at bigideaedit.com/newsletter.